You know, I don't look up to anyone. I've never had someone I think is awesome, whatever they call that, right? That you go, yeah, I want to be like that person. Never found it until I met Bob Goff. I saw him speak at a conference, and he changed me. I saw him and Catherine Wolfe, actually, a woman in a wheelchair who both of them spoke almost in a row, and they're the first two people I've ever seen or met where I was like, I want to be more like you. So I'm going to read you a story from Love Does from Bob Goff to give you an idea of who he is. Perhaps you'll understand why I'm so in love with him. This is called The Reach. It says, I used to be afraid of failing at something that really mattered to me, but now I'm more afraid of it succeeding at things that don't matter. There was a point in my life where I realized I'm not going to make another bad man rich. At least I'm not going to be paid for it. And so I really get this. I succeeded at a lot of things that didn't matter. My first real job was at Lair's Greenhouse Restaurant, and it was really empty. It was a fantastic glass building designed to look like an arboretum. It was the crystal cathedral of fine dining. Each table was set inside its own wonderfully ornate white gazebo. And there were dozens of them. The crystal was perfect, the china was delicate, and the waiters were coiffed and formal in their black tuxedos, cummerbunds, and bow ties. When I applied to work at Lair's, I imagined how great I would look in a tux, how I would memorize the menu and make every prom date or business dinner flawless. I also imagined myself counting my pile of money from generous tips. In order to become a waiter at Lair's Greenhouse, I had to start as a busboy and work my way up. I did pretty well, I guess, but then, again, how can you screw up collecting dirty dishes? It was hard work, but the thought of being a waiter someday made it all worth it. As a busboy, I learned that tables enveloped in white gazebos, while creating a stunning atmosphere, make for some tight and hard to maneuver situations. By the time I got to the tables to pick up dishes, everyone would be gone. And I wondered how the waiters navigated that reach. On my 1-year anniversary, the maitre d' pulled me aside and said I could buy my tuxedo and become a waiter. I was at the tuxedo shop the next morning as soon as it opened. When opening night came for me and I had my first shift as a waiter, I was so excited I could barely eat. I sprinted out from my small apartment and grabbed some quick Mexican food around the corner because they wouldn't let us eat the food at the restaurant. Classic. I rushed back and slipped on my tuxedo for the first time since trying it on at the store. The tuxedo was expensive, but I knew I'd earn enough in tips over the next month or two to pay for it. I had put down half the money when I bought it and had agreed to pay off the rest in payments for my new waiter job. I intentionally lingered around the apartment complex where I lived just long enough for everyone living near me to see that I indeed had a tuxedo with a ruffled shirt. I left it to their imagination to figure out just how special I was. I hopped into my thrashed VW Bug, drove to the restaurant, and parked around the corner to make sure no one saw me pull up in a VW. I wanted to have that 007, my other car is an Aston Martin look. The night was cloudless. You could see the stars through the glass ceiling. Cinderella wouldn't have been out of place pulling up in her carriage. There were twinkle lights on all the gazebos. It was like Christmas in July. The whole restaurant had a new feel to me, like I'd been an understudy in a play and now I was walking out on the big stage as a lead. The maitre d' escorted my first guest to one of the elegant gazebos in my zone. It looked like a wealthy doctor and his business guests. They were each starched and tidy, and each guy actually looked like he could be the Surgeon General. The women looked like they had stepped off the cover of Vogue. The women sat down as the gentlemen slid in their chairs. As soon as the men were settled, I put napkins in everyone's lap and gave them the speech I'd rehearsed a dozen times in my bathroom mirror while my toothpaste and deodorant listened. I told them about the many incredible choices they had that evening for what would certainly be the best food, best service, and most remarkable dining experience of their lives. In a word, I promised that the evening would be flawless. I placed their orders and after a short time came back to the gazebo with steaming plates. All seemed to be going well until the unthinkable happened. As I was making the big reach across the wide table, I felt this massive grumbling somewhere south of my stomach, down as deep as one could imagine. There was no time to react. At the pinnacle of my full extension across the table with a plate of prime rib, out came the most impressive and lengthy gassing you can ever imagine. I hardly had time to regret the Mexican food I'd eaten earlier. This was terrible in its own right. But what was more remarkable is that it went on forever. I could have sounded out the alphabet if I had have gotten my hands back there, and no amount of butt tightening would put an end to it. As I finished my episode, looks of absolute shock came from my guests into focus. I think I heard a woman scream. It certainly caught the attention of the surrounding tables. A hushed silence descended on us all, and I just stood there, paralyzed, holding the prime rib high over the table, and I didn't know what to say. I was afraid that any movement might set off an aftershock. Finally, one of the men got up, threw the napkin I placed in his lap on the table, and walked straight to the maitre d'. With punishing accuracy, I saw him describe what just went down, acting out my full extension as he stood on one foot and leaned across an imaginary table. The sounds he tried to recount lacked a certain bass tone and texture, but overall I think he got the general idea and duration pretty right. I was fired on the spot. No kidding. First table, he was fired. This really brings me great relief to hear things like this. This is so hard for someone to take, but thank God I'm not the only one that has these incredibly powerful life development scenarios. With my cummerbund in one hand, they're humbling, but they're so good for you. With my cummerbund in one hand and bow tie in the other, I walked back to my VW Bug with my head hanging low, sat in the front seat, took a deep breath, and wondered what I was supposed to feel at a time like this. On the one hand, I just destroyed a year's worth of work. I'd learned the waiter spot playing in the minor leagues, bussing tables, and when I finally stepped up to the plate to the major leagues, I swung as hard as I could and hit the umpire in the back of the head. I don't know how I could have messed up any worse, to be honest. Yet on the other hand, I had a story for the ages, and a story I could someday tell my kids when they thought they had made a big mistake. I took in another deep breath and felt this huge grin spreading across my face. The grin was almost happening to me than me making it happen. As I drove home, I recounted the events from the last hour or two. I thought about my now useless tucks, the guests, the order, the infamous extension, the gasps, the screams, the firing. I can't lie. I knew even then it had indeed been an amazing, if not flawless, night. I don't do turnarounds as fast as him. My grandmother, Grandma Mary, used to tell me, "You're nothing until you've been fired once or twice." She didn't give me any disclaimers for how you get fired, so I assumed her adage still applied to me. No one ever told me that. But now, I get it. For the next 6 months, I made payments on that tux until I dropped it off at Goodwill, and I never tried my hand as a waiter again. The thing I love about God is He intentionally guides people into failure. He made us be born as little kids who can't walk or talk or even use a bathroom correctly. We have to be taught everything. All that learning takes time, and He made us so we're dependent on Him, our parents, and each other. The whole thing is designed so we try again and again until we finally get it right. And the whole time, He is endlessly patient. I love those passages in Scripture where Jesus teaches the disciples something, saying, "I want to teach you to think differently about life." They walked with Him for years, and some of them didn't learn everything they needed to know until after He'd gone back to heaven. Yet, even though they were slow to learn, they still referred to themselves as His beloved. Failure is just part of the process, and it's not just okay, it's better than okay. God doesn't want failure to shut us down. God didn't make it a 3 strikes and you're out sort of thing. It's more about how God helps us dust ourselves off so we can swing for the fences again. And all of this without keeping a meticulous record of our screw-ups. I found another job eventually, and eventually I lost that one too. But I lost it because I chose to that time, not because I was fired. Finding things and losing things is what the Bible is all about. God seemed to encourage it even. He talked about losing your job or even your life if you want to find it. He talked about losing your status to find real power. He shows that Jesus comes looking for us because people, like sheep, have a knack for getting lost. And Jesus was a human. Your job is to also go find lost sheep. If you're a Christian especially, you shouldn't be sitting in a bubble with all your Christian friends. You should be out there looking for everyone who's lost in the world. You are actively disobeying who you claim to be following. He shows that Jesus comes looking for us because people, I'll say again, like sheep, have a knack for getting lost. And when He finds us, we usually aren't dressed in a tux. Things go wrong. Things that go wrong can shape us or scar us. I think they do both. I've had some things go well in my life and some things not go so well, just like you. More have gone well than have gone poorly. But I'm not trying to keep score because I have a different way I measure those things now. God finds us in our failures and our successes. And he says that while we used to think one way about things, now he wants us to think another way about the same things. And for me, I've realized that I used to be afraid of failing at the things that really mattered to me. But now I'm more afraid of succeeding at things that really don't matter. It's a real turning point in life for the achiever who's looking for love in all the wrong places. One thing I love about Bob Goff is even if you believe Jesus is a human, you can still read his stuff because it's about God. It's really about God. And that's where we need to focus, your relationship with your divine essence. The reason God says you need to lose your life to find it, or you need to lose power to find it, is because you think everything comes from the external world. When I see evangelical Bible Christians look at Trump and think that that's something to idolize, which they do, they worship him, that's the good thing to be. He is the anti, literally, of everything that the Bible teaches God is. He shows you where we think our power is, and we're all going to witness that there's no power in any of that. Now, you know that's the case when you're on your deathbed because you know none of the money mattered. That's the clear moment. Because you can't add to it. It doesn't bring you any more security. It's not going where you're going. So all the effort you put into it has nothing to do with your eternal journey. And that moment of clarity doesn't show up until you're on your deathbed for most people. I was blessed enough to see that at a relatively early age. And so that is not the moment that I want to have before I pass away of, oh, I missed the point, which is how most people die. Which is okay because you still get your learning, but I don't want to wait till then. I want to get it now, and I want to enjoy my life now, and I want to be happy now, and I want to start to make it so important to be happy. And happiness doesn't come from success. It happens from farting and getting fired. And we don't realize that because then you go, wow, I was worshiping this job. I was worshiping that tux. I was worshiping the way I look. That's all idol worship technically because I think it's going to give me something that it can't. And until it's ripped from my cold, clenched fingers, I'm not going to realize that there was nothing in that. There's a million jobs like that. There's a million different ways to manifest your power. Did it make me happy, or did I let it trick me that I needed to be something other than me to get there? Happiness can only be found within and found when it's separate from any external conditions. Until I can maintain my great mood, regardless of what's going on outside of me, politics, money, family, whatever else, I have not achieved a true center. That's why the teaching is the kingdom of God is within you. Everything works out when you're at peace inside. Nothing works out when you're working to find peace outside. And that sounded kind of cool. So I think with that, I'm going to go ahead and wrap and just say thanks for being here, guys. Just a little morning reading. It's been a journey, and I really appreciate you being here with me.